daughters, sisters, and wives. They're gonna change our lives. Be women, be girls. They'll make a better world. Invest in her. Invest in her. Invest in her. And now here's your host, Catherine Gray.
Welcome to this week's edition of Invest in Her. I'm your host, Catherine Gray, founder of She Angel Investors and co-founder of the She Angels Foundation, both designed to help fund women. I have an extraordinary guest today. I love talking to her whenever I get a chance. She's an astrologer, a healer, and a psychic, and she actually advises people on how the planets are aligning to help grow and boost your business. So it's going to be an interesting discussion about that, and also what's happening with the planets to be supportive of women in the coming decades. How exciting is that? Please give a warm welcome to my very special guest, Rachel Lang. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you so much. What a great introduction. Well, I always love talking to you too.
Thank you. Well, every year I schedule my review with you and you read my charts. It's all based on, where you're born, what time, all of those things. I find it so fascinating because obviously, like most people, it's something I really don't understand, but it's so interesting how you're able to do this. And it really impacts everything from one's business life to their love life to their finances. I know you actually work with a lot of A-list celebrities, corporate executives, entrepreneurs, in advising them as to how the planets intertwining at a certain date and time actually impact their business decision making. So I definitely want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I think first, it's always nice for people to get to know my guests. So let's find out a little bit about your background. Tell us where you were born, where you grew up, and when you realized you had this gift.
Okay. Well, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, in the Midwest. And then I lived there for most of my life. And then I moved to Nashville in the 2000s. And that's really where I started my career and where I met an incredible network of teachers and mentors and people who helped me develop my gifts. And then I ended up making my way to LA in about 11 years ago. And so I've been here ever since.
I love that. And I know you have a master's in theology.
Yes, I do.
And you also are vice president of an organization, which I don't know what it stands for, but it's the National Council for Geocosmic Research. It
Right.
sounds interesting.
It's very interesting. It's an astrology organization.
So that has to do with astrology, I take it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually it's the kind of the academic arm of astrology. Most people think of astrology as just kind of being woo-woo or like as being a spiritual practice, but it's actually really it's based on thousands and thousands of years of studying and using astrology in case studies. And I mean, our ancient ancestors used astrology for everything, and they planted their crops by astrology. They were able to really track a relationship between what was happening in the cosmos and what was happening here on Earth. So astrology actually has a real scientific, like kind of a scientific arm to it, and that's something that a lot of people don't know.
I think a lot of people do understand how, Pluto and Jupiter and how they align and what house they're in. I think a lot of people really do get it and love reading their horoscope.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? And then, like you said, there's a handful of people that think it's kind of woo-woo. But once somebody has their chart read and they see how all the different things align and the timing and how it really impacts their life and their decisions, there really is such a validity to it. I think everybody should have their chart read personally, just saying, because it's so interesting and it really is helpful. And how do you make decisions, and when do you make them? I know the White House has often been touted as using that. Many of the different presidents have and the first ladies have used this method of, knowing how and when to do the right thing with regard to things with the country. So anyway, speaking of that, I'm really excited to talk about. It's been really recently that the planets have aligned to lift up women. Like, this is the time for the matriarchy. It's returning after many years. Let's talk about that, because you are an expert in that arena. And I think this is something fascinating that everyone's going to want to hear.
Yeah. Well, one of the big things that happened in 2020, and from all of us knew that all of us astrologers have been looking at 2020, because the transits of 2020 are unlike anything we've seen in our lifetime.
Wow.
And
it was a year like anything we've ever seen in our lifetime, right? Yeah.
Yes. And what was happening is that Pluto, which is the planet that it's kind of like the rebirth planet, the planet that kind of breaks things down and allows us to reshape them and recreate them, the planet Pluto was right next to Saturn, which happens every 34 to 36 years. But this particular time, it happened in the sign of Capricorn, which deals with government institutions. It deals with the economy. And if you want to even put it in these terms, Capricorn is kind of like the planet of the patriarchy. It's the planet of the father. And so Pluto came in and it said, all of these institutions that have historically been patriarchal, it's time for all of these for us to see what's not working within them, and for us to reshape them and reform them and recreate them. So all of these systems that we're looking at, religion, government, even family systems, there's a rebalancing of power. So all marginalized voices are having a chance to express themselves. And
so people are thinking, oh, this is just happening. But no, it's these planetary things that are taking place that are actually more powerful than we can even touch or see or feel, that are creating this. And it's very exciting. It's why I think Kamala Harris is in office. It's why people are sitting up and paying more attention to the justices of minorities. It's not just happenstance. It's actually the planets aligning to support this change. I mean, how exciting is that?
Yeah. And it's also, I think for astrology gives us a language of symbols that we can look at and see we can kind of get a little bit more meaning and a little bit of context for what's going on in the world. And one of the things that we're moving toward, Saturn, and so several outer planets moved into the sign of Aquarius. And I know many people have heard that this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius and things like that. And while that's technically a little bit different, Aquarius is, with all these outer planets moving into Aquarius, it's a big theme. And the theme of Aquarius is community, it's collaboration, it's equality, and a lot of humanitarian interests are going to be top of mind and big themes as we move into later into the 2020s. So we're kind of like watching a paradigm shift where things were hierarchical under the old way of being. And now we're moving more toward an egalitarian system that really sees us all as being one community. So, some of these are, like you said, ideals that we saw with matriarchal cultures. But I think we're creating something even different. I think we're creating a whole new way of being.
I love that. It's like a whole conscious rising. It's why people are into impact investing and impact shopping. People are starting to just, I think, evolve into a more humanitarian society. And you wouldn't know that kind of with all the turmoil going on. But don't you think it's because we are moving into this new level, and that's going by the wayside, and people are yelling and screaming to hold on to the old way, but you can't stop that the new way is coming, because nothing is more powerful than the universe and the planets that are aligning to assist this.
Yes. And it's interesting because you raise a point. So in 2021, the astrology really puts Uranus, which is the planet of change and progress and the future, in a challenging relationship with Saturn, which is tradition and history, and even some of those like more conservative values. And so right now we're in this point of having tension between some people really wanting to keep things the way they are, or the way they were, and some people moving us toward something new. And so even the astrology of today is speaking to that very thing that you just raised, to that very point that you just raised.
Now, each person has their own planetary charts, as you and I know, and I have my reading every year, as I mentioned earlier, and you can do it for anybody. And recently I had you on a session with a group from She Angels Foundation, and you were talking about the specific chart for Kamala Harris. Can we address her for just a couple minutes and talk about her chart?
Yes, definitely. And I'm looking at it right now for reference, actually. So
You don't have everybody's memorized?
I have most of it. Actually, I do have most of this memorized, but there were a couple of points that I wanted to bring up today that I didn't want to forget. So one thing that I love about her chart is that she's born actually right at the full moon. So a full moon chart is when the moon is opposite the sun. And usually what happens, so this full moon is on the Libra Aries axis. Libra is the sign of justice. It's the sign of equality, balance. It's also the sign that's ruled by Venus. Venus is about relationships and finding ways to bridge differences. And her moon is in Aries, which is, if Libra is the peacemaker, Aries is the warrior. And so she's got both of these tendencies. And Aries is the leader, is the one who initiates things, who takes charge. And so this axis line is actually really indicative of her personality. One thing I find with people who are born during a full moon or right around the time of a full moon is, when the moon is full, we can see in the dark. We can see things that we wouldn't otherwise see. And this is how full moon people are. They kind of shine a spotlight on what's not working. Mm-hmm. And they feel a mission. They feel compelled to show other people, to say, hey, look at this. Look what I can see that you can't see. And so, so I think that this gives her her chart indicates that she's got the compassion and the desire to support justice and the desire to bridge, divides with that Libra sun, but she's not afraid to fight. And I think we totally saw this with the Kavanaugh hearings. Mm-hmm. And that was really a time when and even in her career as a prosecutor, I think she's always wrestling with being able to see both sides. And she's faced some criticism for this from progressives and from conservatives alike. But I think that this, when I'm looking at her chart, I'm seeing that tendency for her.
I really love that about her, because there's nothing better than like this really strong warrior woman who's also so compassionate, and I feel likable. I feel like she's got a great sense of humor. She's warm. And, just the perfect type of woman that needs to be in a position like that, who's warm, smart, but bold and tough. And that's a hard combination to find. And that's, because it's so hard for women in politics, there's judged by such different degrees than men are. She really has that perfect balance of toughness, but likability in that mix. But so no wonder her chart says that she is like an ideal person to be filling those shoes. I'm not surprised. Um, so I love where how the planets are aligning to support all this humanity and change. It's very exciting. It makes me feel like it's unstoppable because sometimes you really question, oh, is this really going to go in the right direction? But it's nice to know that the planets in the universe are really supporting this to happen in a positive way. I always like to think positively and hopeful. And gosh, it just seems like when a person or a planet goes through growing pains, it can get ugly and tough. And then you get to the other side, and it's such a beautiful place. And I feel like that's where we're headed, but we're going through those growing pains right now, which are not pretty.
Yeah, it's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah. I feel like people that are in your profession doing astrology and psychic work it's a gift.
Hmm.
And I remember you sharing with me that you knew at a very young age that you had this gift, because I think it's something you're born with. And, people either tap into it or they don't, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think we're all born with intuition. We're
Mhm.
all born with an awareness of our spiritual selves. And for me, yes, I actually learned. I early on, I could feel and see spirits, and I was raised in an evangelical Christian home, like a Catholic evangelical home, and so it was actually really encouraged by my parents to, they when I saw angels, or I would tell them about the spiritual information that I was seeing or feeling, they really encouraged it. And I don't think they knew at the time that I would be doing this career, because they might have like tried to suppress it, but but they didn't. And so then when I actually discovered astrology when I was 14 years old. And then it opened a whole new door to me, to all of these other ways that I could express these gifts. And so I could see relationships between the spiritual practices of my early childhood and the the gifts that I was starting to open and use in my late teens.
And see how they come together.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, and I actually did do quite a lot of studying and development. I mean, I started working with mentors and teachers at New Age bookstores and spiritualist churches when I was 18 or 19, several decades ago, and so I started kind of building on those skills, and learning how to fine tune them, and then how to share them with others.
Right. Um, I know people can find you at rachellangastrologer.com
Mhm.
if they would like to have a reading. When you do a reading for someone, like I know you've done for me, basically you just need where they were born and the time of day, right?
And
Why
the place. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the day, time, and place.
the day, the time, and the place? Why is that? What does that tell you?
Well, the every basically a birth chart maps out what was happening in the sky in our solar system at the time of your birth. And because the Earth is revolving around the sun and rotating on its axis throughout the day, it's moving every couple of hours. And so the signs on the eastern horizon and the western horizon are significant in terms of revealing things about your personality, revealing things, and all the basically the time does is it places all the different planets in different sectors in your chart. And a sector or a house is a different area of your life. So there's a lot of layers of symbolism that go into the chart.
So I just have to ask you. I know you have a lovely wife, Tish,
Yeah.
who's just a doll. So when you met her, honestly, you got to tell me, did you do her chart? I would
Absolutely.
have.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I have yes, that I used to, when I was dating, I never really went on a date or anything until I had someone's birthday. Or sometimes I would do it during the first date. But yeah, no, Tisha and we were good friends. We actually were colleagues and good friends. So I had her chart. I knew it backwards and forwards. And
I
here's
love it.
something funny. Um, there were things about it
If
that
somebody's going to date somebody, it would be a good idea for them to reach out to you and get the chart read, right? Because doesn't it kind of tell you if that person is going to be compatible with you or not? I know somebody told me, our friend Michelle had looked at both mine and Deborah's charts and said it was very compatible. And so I did put a lot of heat into that, but I thought, oh, well, that's good, but I do think it's something people should do before they date somebody. I mean, why
Yeah.
not? You know?
Yep, absolutely. It really does help. And even if, I mean, compatibility is such a complex art in astrology, but it lets you know what are the problem areas of the chart going to be, or what are the problem areas of the relationship going to be. But there were things about Tisha's chart that I was like, I don't know about that. And I eventually, I mean, I was so in love with her that I was like, it made me rethink my whole, like, several things about relationships and astrology.
Yeah.
She actually opened my mind quite a bit.
So you got you take it in and you make sure there's a certain compatibility, but it doesn't have to be 100%, obviously.
Exactly. In fact,
Although
it works better sometimes if it's not.
Yeah, I always tell people that my mother didn't give me a whole lot of relationship advice, but I tell Deborah that she did tell me the most important thing is compatibility. And her and I are so compatible that I now look back and think, wow, that was really good advice. But yeah, I do think having a chart read could at least tell you kind of an idea of, like, unless they're like completely wrong for you, it could tell you that, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So, what do you like most about reading people's charts? Because I get the idea you get a lot of joy from what it is you do. So, what is it you enjoy most about helping a person? About anything, but I'm going to put the specific on because we're always talking about, on this show, women getting funding and building their businesses. What do you like about working with business people, about letting them know how the chart impacts their business decisions? Because I find that fascinating.
Yes, and I've actually worked with a number of companies, and I've seen a couple of my companies go from startup phase to going public, and so it's really exciting to be a part of that process. What I like about working with businesses is usually I'm working with people who are really passionate about what they're doing and who are very driven and who have a vision for where they want to go. And I can help them get to that vision and plan things out accordingly. Every business has a birthday. It has an incorporation date, or it has, the date that you file the LLC, the date that you earn your first dollar. These are all charts that we look at, and I can see, optimum times. Like, this is a time when you want to be really pushing PR. This is a time when you want to be expanding into other markets. Just yesterday, I was helping a company figure out which markets they want to expand into based on their looking at their astrology and the map. It's it's called astrocartography. So we can actually see what areas of the country are most favorable for her to be franchising her company. So
it's fascinating. And I didn't know about the part about the birth date of the business. So that's interesting. Like, the day you incorporate it is like its birthday, and you can do a chart from that. That is so interesting. And so so is it part the planetary astrology? And then also, I mean, you're a psychic, you have intuition. Is it part, I feel like when I talk to you, sometimes it's part download too. Like, you should be thinking about this, and and it's that combination.
Yep, it is. And yeah, so I do combine the two. You got it. And I really like, I mean, I like the mathematics of astrology and the way that it's it's based on cycles, and it's based on seasons, and they can be really easy to forecast. You can look at something and say, oh, okay, you're in this cycle, or in this cycle. But then the intuition comes in mostly, when I'm identifying things that where people get stuck, or why, if they have questions like, why am I not growing my business, or why am I involved in this lawsuit, I can look at the astrology and see the symbolism, but I can also help to download, as you said, some information for how they could get out of it or what they could do differently.
Wow. I mean, that is so powerful. I think every business person should be talking to you when they launch their business, when they're growing their business, when they're taking a new step. They can find you, of course, at rachellangastrologer.com. And are you on social media too?
Yes, I am on Instagram, Rachel Lang Astrologer, and on Facebook and Twitter. I just started Twitter. I'm a little bit behind the curve on Twitter, but yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody's good at one or two, but not all of them,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just started Clubhouse and TikTok as well. So.
Oh, I love it. Oh, yes. I think you're perfect for Clubhouse. People are going to want to find you there. That sounds really fascinating to have some sessions on there and hear what you're doing. Well, I think people should visit rachellangastrologer.com. I certainly have all the confidence in you every year that we talk to you. And I want to talk to you more about the business part of it, because I find that interesting that we just talked about that today. Every business should have this type of guidance to make the right decisions. So they can follow you on social media. I hope they are following us, She Angel Investors, on social media as well. And just thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Be sure to reach out to Rachel Lang, and remember to invest in her. Make it a great week. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Catherine.
Our theme music was created and produced by Lindsay Tomasic.